ABC General Hospital spoilers reveal that, in the fragile calm that settles over Port Charles after every storm, the most dangerous shifts are rarely loud. They begin in silence, in the careful rearranging of truth, in the quiet moment when one person decides that survival matters more than innocence. That is where Willow now stands, no longer simply a woman haunted by what she has done, but someone who has crossed into a far more calculated state of mind, where fear is no longer paralyzing but sharpening, guiding every move she makes. What began as a buried secret tied to the night Drew was shot has now transformed into something far more volatile. Because Willow is no longer reacting to danger, she is actively reshaping it, redirecting it, and, if necessary, weaponizing it against those who threaten to expose her. The moment Willow chooses to accuse Kai and Trina is not impulsive. It is the result of mounting pressure, of sleepless nights where every possible outcome plays out in her mind, each one ending with her losing everything she has fought to protect. Her political ambitions, her fragile hold on stability, and most of all her connection to her child are all tied to a single truth that must never surface. Once she understands that Kai and Trina have begun piecing together what really happened the night Drew was shot, something shifts inside her. The fear does not disappear, but it evolves. It becomes strategic. It becomes dangerous. And in that transformation, Willow makes a choice that changes the direction of everything. She will not be the one cornered, she will be the one who corners. What makes her move so effective is not just the accusation itself, but the way she constructs it. Willow does not simply point fingers, she builds a narrative, one that feels plausible enough to take root in the minds of others. She introduces new evidence, carefully selected, carefully framed, suggesting that Kai and Trina are not just connected to the shooting, but driven by motive. The revelation that Drew had been blackmailing Portia becomes the cornerstone of this story. It is a detail loaded with emotional weight, one that casts Drew not as a victim without enemies, but as a man who created them. By placing this information at the center, Willow shifts the perception of the crime. Suddenly, the shooting is no longer a senseless act. It becomes retaliation, desperation, a response to pressure that had been quietly building beneath the surface. Within that reframed narrative, Kai and Trina begin to look different. Their proximity to the situation, their emotional ties, their reasons to want Drew gone, everything aligns in a way that feels disturbingly coherent. Willow understands exactly how to exploit that alignment. She knows that suspicion does not require certainty, only enough fragments to form a convincing picture. And once that picture exists, it spreads quickly, filling the gaps with assumptions that no one stops to question. For Kai, the consequences are immediate and brutal. The machinery of the PCPD begins to move, not with hesitation, but with the cold efficiency reserved for cases that appear to have direction. His connection to the scene, the lingering traces that can be interpreted as evidence, and now Willow's carefully presented claims all converge into a single, devastating outcome. He becomes the most convenient answer to a question that has been hanging unresolved for far too long. His arrest does not feel like justice being served. It feels like a narrative being accepted. And yet, what makes this moment so unsettling is not just the fact that Kai is taken into custody, but the way it happens under the weight of something that is not entirely real. He is not just fighting accusations. He is fighting a version of the truth that has already been reshaped into something persuasive enough to override doubt. Every attempt to defend himself risks sounding like deflection. Every denial risks reinforcing the suspicion that has already taken hold. In a world where perception begins to outweigh reality, Kai finds himself trapped in a position where the truth alone may no longer be enough to save him. Trina, meanwhile, is pulled into a different kind of nightmare, one defined not by handcuffs, but by the slow suffocation of being implicated in something she knows she did not do. Her connection to Portia and Curtis, the emotional fallout of Drew's actions toward her family, all become elements that Willow subtly turns against her. The suggestion that she might have asked Kai for help, that her anger could have pushed her towards something irreversible, is not stated outright, but it lingers in the spaces between conversations, in the looks exchanged when her name is mentioned. It is enough to isolate her, to make her feel as though the ground beneath her is no longer stable. What Willow understands, perhaps better than anyone else, is that power does not always come from authority alone. It comes from timing, from controlling the flow of information, from knowing when to speak and when to let silence do the work. But in her case, authority still plays a crucial role. Her position, her influence, the credibility she has built in the public eye, All of it shields her in ways that Kai and Trina cannot match. When she presents her version of events, it carries weight. It sounds composed, rational, measured. It does not sound like desperation, even though that is exactly what fuels it. There is a chilling precision in the way Willow uses that power. She does not overreach. She does not make claims that can be easily dismantled. Instead, she nudges the investigation in a direction that feels organic, as though it were always meant to go there. She asks the right questions, highlights the right details, and allows others to arrive at the conclusions she wants them to reach. It is manipulation at its most subtle, and therefore its most dangerous. But beneath that control, beneath the carefully maintained composure, something far less stable continues to grow. Because no matter how effectively Willow redirects suspicion, she cannot erase what actually happened. The truth remains, not just as a fact, but as a presence that follows her, that seeps into her thoughts when the noise fades. Every step she takes to secure her position only deepens the contradiction she is living with. She is protecting her future by distorting her past, and that kind of tension is not something that disappears. It accumulates. That is where the real danger lies, not just for Kai or Trina, but for Willow herself. Because the more she succeeds, the more she becomes tied to the version of events she has created. There is no easy way back from that. Every new move requires another layer of deception, another adjustment, another risk. And with each step, the cost of the truth being exposed becomes higher, not just in terms of consequences, but in terms of the damage it would reveal she has already done. Port Charles has seen its share of lies, of betrayals, of carefully constructed illusions that eventually collapse under their own weight. What makes the situation different is how quietly it is unfolding, how convincingly it is being built. There is no single explosive moment that signals the beginning of the end. Instead, there is a steady tightening, a sense that everything is moving toward a point where something will have to give. For now, Willow appears to be in control. Kai is the one facing arrest. Trina is the one struggling under suspicion, and the story being told is the one she has chosen. But control in a situation like this is never absolute. It is temporary, fragile, dependent on too many variables to hold indefinitely. And somewhere beneath the surface, the truth is still there, waiting, patient, unchanging. When it finally rises, as it always does, it will not just challenge what Willow has done. It will redefine everything, her choices, her motives, and the cost of the path she has taken. And when that moment comes, the question will no longer be whether she can protect herself, but whether there is anything left of her that is still worth protecting. In Port Charles, the most unsettling kind of power is not the one that strikes openly, but the one that tightens its grip in silence, shaping outcomes before anyone realizes they have already been decided. Willow has now stepped fully into that kind of power, and what she is doing to Kai is not simply about shifting suspicion or protecting herself in the aftermath of Drew's shooting. It is something colder, more deliberate, and far more dangerous. By allowing the machinery of the law to close in around Kai, Willow is not just eliminating a threat, she is sending a message, one that does not need to be spoken aloud for its meaning to be understood. Stay silent or lose everything. What makes this strategy so effective is the way it blurs the line between justice and coercion. On the surface, Kai's arrest appears to be the natural progression of an investigation finally gaining clarity. Evidence has been presented, motives have been suggested, and the authorities are acting accordingly, but beneath that surface lies a far more calculated design. Willow understands that once Kai is placed under pressure, once he is isolated, questioned, and forced to confront the possibility of conviction, his priorities will shift. Survival will take precedence over truth. And in that shift, Willow gains exactly what she needs: control. For Kai, the realization comes too late and too slowly. At first there is confusion, then anger, and finally a dawning awareness that what is happening to him is not just about evidence or circumstance. It is about being cornered in a narrative that has already been written. Every move he makes now is constrained by the system closing in around him, and every attempt to speak risks making things worse. Because if he pushes too hard, if he openly accuses Willow, he risks triggering the very retaliation she has silently promised. The threat does not need to be explicit. It is embedded in the situation itself. His freedom is already slipping away. His credibility is already under attack. One wrong move, and whatever chance he has left could disappear entirely. This is where Willow's true transformation becomes impossible to ignore. She is no longer acting out of fear alone. Fear may have been the catalyst, but what follows is calculation, restraint, and an unsettling willingness to let others suffer the consequences of her actions. The possibility that Kai suspects her of poisoning Drew is not something she can allow to grow. It is not just a risk, it is a fracture in the carefully constructed reality she has built around herself. And so, she moves to seal it, not by confronting him directly, but by placing him in a position where speaking the truth becomes too dangerous to attempt. At the same time, Willow's ability to maintain this balance, to appear composed, reasonable, even concerned, adds another layer of complexity to the situation. To those watching from the outside, she does not look like someone orchestrating a cover-up. She looks like someone trying to make sense of a chaotic situation, someone cooperating, someone seeking answers. That perception is her shield, and she uses it with precision. Every statement she makes, every detail she emphasizes, reinforces the image she needs others to see. It is not just about hiding the truth, it is about replacing it with something more believable. Yet beneath that carefully managed exterior, something far more unstable continues to grow. Because the act of suppressing the truth does not erase it, it distorts it, twists it into something that lingers in the background of every decision Willow makes. The more she relies on control, the more she becomes dependent on it. Every step forward requires another adjustment, another calculated move, another risk that must be contained. And with each layer she adds, the weight of what she is hiding becomes heavier, more difficult to carry without cracks beginning to show. That is where Sidwell enters the equation, not as a coincidence, but as an escalation. Willow's growing connection to him signals a shift from reactive manipulation to something far more dangerous. Sidwell does not operate within the boundaries that still in some ways restrain Willow. His world is one where leverage is absolute, where consequences are permanent, and where morality is not a factor that influences decisions. By aligning herself with him, even indirectly, Willow is stepping into territory that offers greater control, but at a cost she may not fully understand. This connection introduces a new kind of threat, one that extends beyond Kai and Trina, beyond the immediate question of who shot Drew. It suggests that Willow is no longer just trying to protect herself from exposure. She is building a network of protection, one that can be used not only to silence, but to eliminate obstacles entirely if necessary. And once that line is crossed, there is no easy way back. Because the kind of help Sidwell provides is never free, and the kind of solutions he offers tend to create new problems that are even harder to escape. For Kai, this means that his situation is far more precarious than it appears. He is not just dealing with legal danger. He is entangled in something that operates beneath the surface, something that cannot be fought with evidence alone. Even if he finds a way to defend himself against the charges, even if cracks begin to appear in the case against him, the pressure will not simply disappear. Because the real force working against him is not the investigation, it is Willow's determination to keep her secret buried at any cost. And for Willow, the path she has chosen is becoming increasingly difficult to control. What began as a desperate attempt to avoid exposure is evolving into something that requires constant maintenance, constant vigilance. She is no longer just hiding from the truth. She is actively reshaping the world around her to keep that truth contained. And in doing so, she is creating a reality where danger is no longer something she reacts to, it is something she generates. That is the most chilling transformation of all. Because once someone becomes comfortable with that level of control, with that willingness to manipulate outcomes and people alike, the line between defense and offense disappears completely. Willow may believe she is protecting herself, preserving what she has built, holding on to what matters most, but in reality she is stepping deeper into a cycle that does not end with safety. It ends with isolation, with consequences that cannot be undone, and with a version of herself that may no longer recognize where it all began. Port Charles is beginning to shift around her, even if no one can fully see it yet. The tension is no longer just about uncovering what happened to Drew. It is about the ripple effects of a single decision to conceal the truth, and how far someone is willing to go to make that concealment permanent. And as Willow continues down this path, the question is no longer whether she can keep her secret. It is how many lives will be altered before that secret finally comes to light.